you will need these 1,200 euros to get to a cash flow of 0. However, you only have 458 euros, which you get in cold rent. So you already know by now, just by typing in a few of these numbers here, you already know that you have a deficit of at least 700 euros per month. So this is really probably not going to work out for you. Hi everyone, Hans here. Welcome back to the channel. Are you looking to invest in an apartment in Germany, but you're unsure how to evaluate whether this is a good deal or not? In this video, I will take you step by step through the process of analyzing a property on Immobilienscout and a custom spreadsheet which I created to help you evaluate properties. We'll focus on finding the right apartment, comparing prices, running a financial due diligence to ensure a profitable investment. And by the end, you'll know exactly what to do and what to look for before heading to the notary. I will show you how to use key real estate tools, what to look for in a listing, how to compare market prices, and what costs to consider beyond just the purchase price of the property. And overall, this is the guide I wish I had when I started out investing in properties like this. So now let's dive in. So this is what I usually do. I type in on Immobilienscout what city I'm looking to invest in this case Berlin, let's say, and a very nice area called Prenzlauer Berg, which is very special, very expensive as well to invest in, but also to live in. And then what you can see is all of these different listings here. What I then usually do also is, since I know I don't want to spend that much money at the beginning, I usually type in, I want to see only the apartments which are up to a maximum of 50 square meters. And this basically also limits how many ads you can see online, obviously. And then I'd say, let's just jump into a couple of these and try to analyze them and make some sort of comparison between them. So now let's say we want to evaluate whether a property makes sense for us to invest in and analyze it accordingly. And I picked out one apartment which is in Berlin as well. I pre-selected it just because I have so much information on the property already so that we can fill in our analysis sheet here in a second. But let's try, and this is what it looks like. To have a look at this listing first, and then we'll put it into our calculator. Let's have a look at the pictures first. Sometimes they're really random photos of the property, or not even of the property, as in this case, just in the listing. Just ignore those. You can see a good picture here of the overall house. So it seems to be in a good condition based on what we can see here, at least. If this is really the property, then the roof probably got renovated at some point, and the facade as well. Maybe even the windows. Maybe we can see that here later on. But I'd say from the outside it looks decent, right? This is what it looks like from the inside. Really clean, really tidied up. So that's something you look for as well. I wouldn't invest in any like shady buildings which don't look too nice. So this is good for now. Another random photo which you don't care about. Same goes for this. And you can see like the basic floor plan or area, how the apartment is set up, right? So you come in here, have a small room. This seems to be some sort of storage space because it's only 3 square meters. Then you do have like a large eating and chill out area over here, dining area as well. This seems to be the kitchen with 5 square meters, so fairly small. Then a door here. And then a small bathroom here as well, really small, 3.25 square meters. Then you have the bedroom over here with like 14 square meters. So that's good to know how the room is set up. What I always look for in an ad after I have looked at the pictures is some other information. So sometimes you can see here on Immobilienscout the exact address where this apartment is located. That's not the case here, but that's not a problem either. Now this apartment is being sold through a broker, as you can see here. That's his name, Sascha Einig, and this is basically his company or the company he works for. And then obviously also some really relevant information, what the purchase price is or the offering price. It doesn't need to be the purchasing price, right? Because you can negotiate the price down. Then the price per square meter, which is also highly relevant for you. The amount of square meters, 65 in this case. And that's really the first things I'm looking for. Now let's stick to the price real quick. What I always do, if you're not really ssure whether this is a good price or not, I try to type in the exact address of the apartment in atlas.immobilienscout24.de, and that's like a website where you can type in the exact address. If you have the exact address, as I just said, in this case we don't have the exact one, so we just got to use the zip code, which is available and which was public on the ad. and then just choose whatever street. Now this is obviously very high level, right? We're trying to choose, I just chose whatever street we have here, Albeckerstraße 10, and then it spits out a square meter price. And this is, again, you gotta be careful about this. This is like a very average price, which is being shown here. It doesn't go into the details of the apartment, obviously. It's just based on Immobilienscout's data, which they had a couple of months back. So this might even be a little bit outdated, but what you can see here already is that 5,500 euros is what Immobilienscout says this property is worth per square meter. And as we said here, this one is being offered for 4,100. So there's like a big difference between those two prices, right? And that is what you're looking for when you want to find suitable apartments to invest in. Roughly 1,100 euros below the market price based on Immobilienscout's data. Again, take this number with a grain of salt, right? It's not specific to the apartment. It doesn't include whether the apartment has been renovated, let's say in the past 20 years, or whether it's completely old and hasn't been touched for the last years. Also, since we just took whatever street was available here, right, Albeckerstraße and not the specific street, it just gives us an indication of where the price could be in that region. The more information you can put in there on Atlas Immobilienscout, the better. But now let's further really quickly have a look at the other data which is being shown. So this one was built in 1906. It was modernized in 1997, so that's a good sign. And the energy efficiency class is also something I'm looking for. This one is D, so the energy efficiency levels go from A to H, and I would definitely invest in a property with an energy efficiency class of D, so that's not an issue here. Let's now go down to the description. I always go through the description just to read whatever they say here. Sometimes there's really valuable information in there, like the exact address even, or information regarding the costs of the apartment. But sometimes it's really also just generic information, generic text, which the broker put in this ad. But let's quickly go through this. This is just basically covers what I have just said. And now what's important here is that this apartment has been rented out since 2002, so for like a really long time, 23 years now. Which means that the current rent is probably very, very low. That's what I would imagine. Now it also says the monthly Hausgeld, so like the allocable and non-allocable costs, which you have to pay to the management company, which takes care of the whole building, is 281 euros per month. That's another price point we need later on in our calculation. But now, what I do in this case, right? We said in summary that we might be a little bit below average price here, right? With like 1,000 euros per square meter. So that's a good sign. That's what you want to achieve as an investor. The next step is then to contact this broker, and that's what I do immediately. Through Immobilienscout, I click on Nachricht here, or message in German, and I ask for the relevant information on the property, the relevant documents to be sent to me, like the exposé, like the protocols, the Abrechnung, or like the calculations of the management company, the Energieausweis, which is like the energy efficiency class of the apartment, and other relevant documents. And then this is basically the text I'm using for this. So I'm saying, hello, my name is blah, 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 and I'm really interested in investing in a property like this, and that's how I find your apartment. I'm very interested in it, and I'd be thankful if you could send me the relevant documentation, like the exposé and other available documents. That's basically my text. That's everything I say. I click on send, and then they got the message, right? Now, the next step is then usually either you get an automated email back, which sends you the exposé at least, or you get like a manually typed in email from the broker a couple of days afterwards. It can take up to, like I'd say, 2 to 3 days until you get the information, but it really depends on the broker here, whether he or she uses an automated system or not. In this case, obviously, as I said before, I pre-selected this property just to give you an indication of what such process looks like, right? But I got an email from this guy, and you can see here that's like an automated message which I received. And if I click on this button here, Objekt ansehen, it leads me to the online exposé on his website. And that's most of the times I think it goes like this, I would say. Now it gets really interesting, because in the exposé usually the exact address is written, as is the case over here as well. So Gleimstraße 60, that's the information you're looking for. That's the exact street address. So we're going to take that, put it into our Atlas Immobilienscout again, choose this address, and then find the exact average price for this location, right? Again, it's still average, right? It's just specific to the location, but it's based on rent or like older data, and also not specific to the apartment. As I said, the inner conditions of the apartment can vary significantly, but still it gives us an indication. So 5,700 euros per square meter. And that again confirms our assumption that this property is being sold below market price, right? Because we said the original offering price was 4,100 euros per square meter, and this one seems to be a lot higher based on Immobilienscout's data. Now, sometimes in the exposé which you receive from the broker, there might be additional photos which weren't put into Immobilienscout, but in this case they're just the exact same photos. But now there's some more information which is really highly relevant for us. Let's go through this again. It's basically the exact same description as on Immobilienscout. That's usually always the case with these exposés, but then you get more relevant data regarding the exact costs. Again, this is 65 square meters. It's in the third OG, like on the third level. And you can see the relevant information regarding the rent here. So 458 euros per rent, that's a cold rent. You do have the Hausgeld of 265 euros, so the non-allocable and allocable costs. And this is also rather relevant for you. The reserves of the whole building, 253,000 euros overall. I'd say that's decent. It's obviously a large building, so if you would have to renovate the roof or whatever, this would definitely cost a lot of money as well. But this is a solid reserve, I would say. As I said before, it's currently rented out, and they even say that this apartment needs to be renovated at some point. Okay, then some other random data, like the distances to any other like public transportation or other things, which is not really that relevant for you. But I think that's pretty much it. That's all we need for now. And the next step is then to analyze whether this is a good investment or not, right? So what we do is we take out our calculation spreadsheet, and this is what it looks like. This is what I have crafted. If you are interested in this, click on the link below in the video description. I developed the spreadsheet myself, and I really tried to make it as intuitive as possible, meaning you know exactly where to put in the data. For example, I always highlighted the information which you need to edit if you want to analyze a property here in like a baby blue color. And this section here, or this spreadsheet, is set up into 3 different sections. We have a quick evaluation tab. If you type in the relevant data, and we'll do this here in a second, you get a glimpse of whether this might be a good property or not to invest in. Then you have a detailed calculation or evaluation. Then you really go into the numbers and decide whether this is a good investment or not. And then you also have a scenario analysis in which you can sort of set up a scenario how this will perform over the next 10 years and what profit you will get out of this investment if you sell tax-free after 10 years. But let's go through this real quick, and let's type in the relevant data, and I'll take you through this step by step, and I'll be switching to the exposé and this calculation spreadsheet here on and off. But let's start with the purchase price of the property. So we said this costs us 269,000 euros. So let's type that in. We would like to finance 100% of the purchase price, right? That's usually the case here in Germany. You finance the 100%, and then in addition you pay roughly 10% of the purchase price to cover the closing costs or the side costs, such as the notary, transfer tax, the broker fee, and so on. So let's stick to 100% here. As of now, you usually get an interest rate of 4% for loans like this. Maybe this is going to decline in the next months. That's probably going to happen, but we'll see. For now, you can get 4%. And you want to repay the loan with 1.5% of the purchase price per year. Usually this ranges between 1.5 and 2% here. Now, the cold current rent is And let's switch back to the expose, 458 euros. And then this sort of automatically spits out what you can derive from this calculation. Now, as I said before, you bring in roughly 10 to 12% of equity of your own money of the purchase price to cover the closing costs. So in this case, this would be 32,000 euros. And now this is really important. You need this amount, 1,232 euros, to cover the bank loan, right? Meaning interest and the repayment of the principal. These in addition, or these overall 5.5%, as we described earlier up here, you will need that, these 1,200 euros, to get to a cash flow of 0. However, you only have 458 euros, which you get in cold rent. So you already know by now, just by typing in a few of these numbers here, you already know that you have a deficit of at least 700 euros per month. So this is really probably not going to work out for you. And this is mainly due to the really low cold rent, right? Since this renter has been living in it for more than 20 years, they probably have never increased the rent in that time, or not to a significant amount. And that's why the cold rent is so low. And that's also why you have a big deficit in your monthly calculation. But we'll go a little bit deeper into that here in a second. This just gives you a first glimpse of whether this might be a good idea to invest in or not. And then this is the third number, right? This basically shows you how much you would have to increase the rent to get to cash flow 0 or to be cash flow neutral. So this is again 774 euros, so really a lot of money on a monthly basis, right? Which you would have to increase the rent by. So you would have to more than double it, and that's really not feasible here in Berlin and in Germany, because you can't just increase the rent to whatever level you would want it to be, right? So if you would still buy this apartment, you can still do that, but it's really not a good case for you, right? Since you have to add so much money on a monthly basis, in this case 774 euros per month, sort of from your own pockets. But let's go into the detailed evaluation sheet, right? Probably I'm just going to do this here, so we have a more detailed understanding of the calculation. However, if I would see these numbers, I probably wouldn't analyze this property further, right? Since it's not really worth it. Even though the purchase price might be lower than the market price, I wouldn't spend that much money on a monthly basis just to buy this property. But let's continue with our calculation. This is, as I said before, the more detailed evaluation tool which I built. And if you want to have this, again, go to my Patreon. This is where you can buy it. Click on the link down below in the description, and that's where you can find this spreadsheet. But let's type in the information again. If you want to do this detailed analysis, I recommend typing in whatever data you have available, such as in this case, the address. That's what we start off with, right? Then we said it has 65, I think, square meters, yes. And the purchase price is 269,000 euros. And then it already also tells you what the average or what the price per square meters is for this offering, right? Now, you do have a bunch of other, as we said, closing costs or side costs, or also called incidental costs, which I put here, such as the broker fees. In this case, 9,600 euros. How do we know this? It's 3.57% usually of the purchase price of the property. Let's make sure this is really correct here. Yes, that's also what it says in the expose. So that's usually the price, 3.57%. Then you have notary fees, which is also roughly 1.5% usually of the purchase price. You have land registry office fees, which is 0.5% of the purchase price, and a property transfer tax. And this is dependent on your exact location where you're buying this property. In Baden-Württemberg, for example, this is 5%. In Berlin, this might be a bit higher or lower. I think it's even higher than that. It might be 6 or 6.5% in Berlin. And also for comparison, in Bayern, for example, this is only 3.5%. Now, overall, these incidental costs sum up to like 28,433 euros. So really a lot of money which you have to put in as equity. And the total sum, meaning the purchase price and the incidental costs, accumulate to 297,000 euros. Now, it gets really interesting. Let's type in how much money you get at the moment in rent. We said 458 euros. So we take that 458 divided by the square meters. and you get 7 euros per square meters. So that's the current rent, right? You type that in over here, 7 euros, and then you can see again, this sort of adds up automatically. The overall cold rent, 455 euros roughly. Now you don't have a parking space, so we're going to leave that empty. This is again the total cold rent, and we'll get to the allocable costs in a second. And that's basically it. And now let's quickly talk about this section here, the taxes section. As with other items, you can also depreciate the costs of this property. You can depreciate the building value of the property over a span of 50 years. And what needs to be noted here is that this does not include the property itself on which the building is built, right? So the ground, or the Grundstück as we say in Germany, this cannot be depreciated as it's written in tax law. The reasoning behind that is that basically the ground cannot be depreciated because it usually doesn't lose in value, right? An apartment, on the other hand, gets older over time and you need to renew things such as electricity, the plumbing work or whatnot over a span of, like, let's say 50 years. So that's why you can depreciate those costs, but not the ground or the value of the ground itself. Now, what's usually the case here, as I said, again, it's depreciated over a span of 50 years. So the AFA rate, or the depreciation rate, is 2% usually. And the share of building in the purchase price is also roughly usually 70%, meaning 70% of the purchase price are attributed to the building value only and not the ground. So that's sort of the long-term basis for the depreciation, in this case 188,000 euros. That's what you have to keep in mind. I wouldn't, to be honest, change these numbers, just leave them as they are. And you'll see what this means here in a second. Now, I'm not going to include the forecast here, so let's skip that part. Let's rather get to the monthly management costs on this side here. The monthly management costs, or also called the Hausgeld, is what you have to pay as an owner per month to the management company. Now, this Hausgeld includes allocable costs, which are costs you can hand over to the renter, right? Costs such as water, property tax, and so on. And then you also have non-allocable costs, which you as an owner have to pay, which is usually the management company, a fee, and also renovations. Let's go back to the exposé and check out how large or how much money you have to spend on Hausgeld. So it already says here, the nicht umlegbare Kosten are 109 euros. So that's the non-allocable costs. 109, let's put it in here. And we are not really sure how much you put into the reserves of this part of these 109, but it's usually, I don't know, let's put in 30 euros. That's usually the case. So like a third of this, these non-allocable costs are usually put into the reserves. Now we still have the allocable part left, and we know that the Hausgeld overall is 265 euros. So let's type in 265 minus the non-allocable part. So Hausgeld should be roughly 156 euros. And then lastly, you also have the property tax, which you pay on an annual basis. That really depends on the exact location of the property. I'd say for this larger apartment, like the one we're looking at the moment, you pay roughly, I don't know, 130 euros per year. So meaning 130 divided by 12. So that's an additional roughly 11 euros per month, which you have to pay, or which actually gets added to the allocable costs, meaning the renter has to pay for it, right? So that's what is important here now. Let's go to the financing part. We are saying, as I said at the beginning, usually you finance 100% of the purchase price through your local bank, and then you bring in 10% of the purchase price of your own equity, or with your own equity or money. So we take 100% here. We usually get, as we said before, 4% in interest for the bank loan, and we pay back 1.5% in interest on an annual basis. Now, this calculation spits out a debt service of 1,232, right? This is basically in line with what we saw earlier, meaning this is what you have to pay to the bank on a monthly basis, covering both interest you pay on your loan and also the repayment of the principal itself. And now probably the most important part, let's have a look at the cash flow calculation. So, and this is all fully automated, right? And maybe one thing which I haven't covered yet, what you can also see here in the titles, is where you can get the exact information from, right? So the basic information about the property itself, you can retrieve from the expose. Same goes for the monthly rent, but also other costs such as the allocable and non-allocable costs you can retrieve usually from the Abrechnung. In this Abrechnung, it's usually stated in a detailed way what costs are attributed to the renter and what costs you have to pay yourself. Now, let's go through this again. The renter currently pays 621 euros in warm rent, meaning cold rent plus the allocable costs, right? Then you do have management costs or the Hausgeld of 275 euros. Then you pay an interest 896 euros to your local bank, and you repay 1.5% of the purchase price, meaning 336 euros on a monthly basis to repay the principal. And this leaves you with an even higher cash flow of 887 euros, right? This is really not what you're looking for, right? Again, this has to do with many different factors here, right? Such as the high interest you're paying at the moment with 4%, but also obviously probably even more important, the really low cold rent of 7 euros per square meter, which is really low and which is basically not comparable to market conditions, right? I mean, if we go back to Atlas Immobilienscout again and look for the current rent prices here for this exact location of the property, it says it's double that, 15 euros per square meter, right? So this again shows you that this is a really low cold rent, for which the property is being rented out. But it also depends on the purchase price, right? If the purchase price would be a lot lower, obviously your cash flow also decreases because you don't have to take such a big loan, and then you don't have to pay that much in interest, but also repayment of the principal. And this is basically what I do if I want to see or evaluate which factors I need to change in order to get to a better cash flow here, right? So let's say we can negotiate the price down to a lower level. So that's the first factor I always change. So let's say we do 240,000 euros as the purchase price and not 269. Now let's also say, and hypothetically, this rent per square meter would be at an average level of 15 euros, as is also stated at Immobilienscout, right, as we just saw. Then your cash flow looks a lot different, right? Only negative 234 euros. So this looks a lot better now. However, obviously you cannot change the rent as you would like to, in Germany at least. So what this tells us is that if we can negotiate the price down to 240,000 euros, and if we can increase the rent to an average level in the next couple of years, let's say, your cash flow also reduces significantly. However, keep in mind that you cannot just increase the rent by however much amount you want to, by any amount you want to increase it by. What would be more realistic is that you go back to the 7 euros and you can increase that rent by 15% every 3 years. So that's usually how it works here in Germany. So the only way this would really make sense is if that person, the renter, moves out at some point. But why would he or she? Because they're paying such a low rent, right? They probably will not move out within the next couple of years. And until then, you will have such a negative cash flow. And again, this is really not what you're looking for here. You would want to find an apartment which gives you at least or somewhere closer to a neutral cash flow, meaning a cash flow of 0, maybe even positive. If you can find that, that would be the ultimate goal. Very difficult sometimes, especially in the bigger cities. But that's what you're looking for and not this one here. So that's basically our calculation for this property. Then there's also another tab, scenario analysis, which I will not dig deeper into. Now, I hope this sort of gave you a good understanding of how I always evaluate whether this is a good deal or not, which I'm looking at or evaluating at the moment. In this case, as you saw, it's really not a good investment to make. So whenever I had filled out this first tab of my spreadsheet here, I knew that this is going to be a bad investment and that I would not make this investment, right? Which makes sense. But I really wanted to show you how this detailed evaluation actually works, how I always do it if I want to make sure that this would be a profitable investment. Now, as I said at the beginning, you can get this sheet if you click on the link down below. And if you do have any questions regarding the sheet, let me know in the comment section down below as well. I really hope you enjoyed this week's video, and if you liked it, please also subscribe to this channel, give this video a thumbs up, and I hope to see you guys soon. Take care. Bye.